if I told you that art markets were so much fun and that they were so easy to do. Yeah, because they're not. If I'm just being completely honest with you, art markets are hard. They can be very hard, but they can also be so worth it. So today I'm going to be going over everything that you need to be successful at art markets, including supplies, inventory, and tech.
Hi, I wanted to pop in here really quickly. Really, what I mean by art markets is literally just any regular market. I personally call them art markets because I sell my art there. However, they're literally just like regular markets, any pop up. That's what I mean. It's not anything like super specific or like specifically art markets. A lot of people don't even call them that, they just call them markets or pop ups. But just to clarify, that's what I meant. You don't have to categorize them as art markets specifically, but again, I do just because I sell my art there. So yeah, sorry. I just wanted to clarify that. I'll let you get back to the video.
And I also wanted to go over some tricks that I've learned along my own personal journey because I have been doing these for quite a while. If you're new here, hi, my name is Mariah. I'm an artist and welcome to my artistic journey. So first of all, the reality of being an artist and trying to sell your work is that not everyone is going to like it, unfortunately, and that's completely okay. Not everyone is going to like your art. It's been more of a process for me to accept, honestly, and I'm here to tell you that it's okay if people don't like your shit. It's okay. I have been doing art markets for a little over 3 years now. I started back in 2021. I did them all throughout 2021 for the most part, and then I kind of stopped in 2022 because I entered my senior year of college, and so I was really focusing on that, and I was also working full-time during that time. So I had a lot going on. I didn't have a lot of time for art markets, but then I started them back up again last year in 2023, and now I am doing them as soon as the market season opens. I'm doing them practically full-time. For me, typically art markets are at least 2 times a month, sometimes more. Sometimes I have them every weekend for a long period of time. It really just depends on where I'm going, what kind of market it is, and honestly the audience that's going to be there. But I will also be going over that here in a little bit. And before I get into the supplies and all of that nitty-gritty stuff, I wanted to let you know that art markets and markets just in general are a complete gamble. Especially in my experience, you really never know what to expect, and you're never going to know what to expect from art markets unless you're going to a very specific one that you've been going to for, season after season, which I'll also get into a little bit later. But they're a gamble, and it's just something that you kind of have to accept if you're willing to do art markets. In my own personal experience, I have done tons of art markets, and if I'm being completely honest, there are art markets that I have done that I will never go back to, and that's okay. And then there's other markets where I make sure to do them every single season because I actually sell products there. That is what you want to focus on, and that's what you want to find. If you are barely getting into doing art markets and you're really confused as to why you may not be selling at some places and then others you are, that's okay, and that's going to happen. I can tell you from my personal experience, I have had really, really successful markets where I've sold over $500 worth of stuff. And then I've had other markets where I literally sell nothing. I have actually done markets where I lose out on money. And that's because some markets require a vendor fee, at least where I live. And that's pretty typical, if I'm being honest. So if you're new to this, just expect that a lot of places are going to have vendor fees, which is okay. Typically, from what I have had here where I live, we don't have a lot of markets that charge you a lot, which I'm very grateful for. But there have been some pretty expensive, in my own personal preference, pretty expensive markets here. I believe one time, for example, I paid $40 for a market and I made $20 on one item. And I was there for 5 hours and I only sold one thing. And that's what I mean by these types of things are just a gamble and you just kind of have to get used to them. Especially if you're new to doing this type of thing, it's an entire experience on its own, and you everyone does also have a different experience because it really depends on like what you're selling, who you're selling it to, what the crowd is that day, what the even down to like what the weather is like. There's so many factors that go into how successful it's going to be. It's just a whole experience on your own, so I can't really say like what your experience is going to be because yours could very well be very different from my own, just because of like I sell very specific things and I am personally still experimenting with a lot of things at art markets, and I don't know what you sell. I don't know what you sell specifically, but I'll go over with you here in a little bit with what I sell and kind of my experience with that, just so you can kind of maybe gauge it. Again, you're going to have these experiences on your own just to kind of get a feel for what your future experiences are going to be, if that makes any sense. Also, you might be wondering why there's a plant on this table, and there just is. I wanted like some greenery in my video, and I had to put this big plant on this table. So if you're wondering, that's why that's there. It's just pretty. It's just for pretty. So, getting into the supplies that you will need for art markets, I am going to be going over the basics, like the very basic, if you've never done a market before, just to get yourself started. But then after that, I'm also going to be sharing with you what I use, and this is coming from someone that has been doing, again, markets for many years now, and I kind of like have adjusted the things that I have to what I need and how I sell things and how successful I want my products to like be sold. But to get started, one of the most basic things that you need to sell at an art market is a table. I like to use 4x6 tables. They're the most commonly used tables at general art markets. Another thing is that some art markets or some vendors in general will be very specific as to what size table that they allow you to use for the event or for the market. And the truth is that 4x6 is just the most commonly used, so I would highly recommend getting a 4x6. I wouldn't really get anything bigger, just because, again, a lot of places are very like specific on what size table you can use. The next thing that is honestly very, very crucial for doing an art market is getting a square card reader. And I'll show you what that is here on the screen. But a square card reader allows you to take card payments with your phone. It's so, so easy. I have been using it since I started doing markets, and it has been a game changer. I think there's been a couple markets where I completely forget my card reader or I lose it or whatever the case may be, and it's just an absolute nightmare. Most people pay with their card nowadays or through like other payment apps, but I highly, highly, highly recommend getting a card reader. 90% of my sales are with card, and that one is so easy. It even has tap to pay. It is so, so convenient. So yes, I highly recommend that. Also, all of these items are in no particular order. I'm just kind of listing them as to how I listed them whenever I wrote them down. Next on our list is to also have other payment apps. And by that, I mean Cash App, Venmo, PayPal. Those are really the only three that I use. If you guys like live somewhere else and there's another payment app that you're more familiar with, even like Zelle or something that you maybe want to use, that is completely up to you. And then I've had quite a few people ask me if I take Apple Pay. And if you have an iPhone, you can take Apple Pay, but you have to get their phone number, and some people aren't like super comfortable with that. But yes, I would highly, highly, highly recommend getting other payment options before you go to your first show or before you go to your next show. Next on my list is kind of a no-brainer, honestly. It's to bring business cards. You want to have business cards, even if it's just with your logo and your name, and on the back it has your email and your Instagram or even if it's just your email. Personally, for me, my business cards have my email, my Etsy shop, my Instagram. I think actually my Instagram is first on this because that's what I want people to see. I like to have my Instagram at the very top so that they can be like, oh, that's her Instagram. Let me put it in my phone right away. And they can follow me, or they can, keep up with me on socials. I think that is like the best way to keep in contact with your audience is social media. However, if you don't do social media, that is completely fine. Make sure that you at least just have your email on there. Again, I have Instagram, my Etsy shop, my email, and I used to have my website, but I had to take that down, so I don't have those. Thankfully, I make my own business cards at home, so I don't have like a bulk of orders that just have like my website that I don't have up anymore. But if you do have to buy them in bulk and you're, kind of cautious about like not, sorry, that was a truck outside. If you're kind of unsure on whether or not like you're going to need to take your website down or even your Etsy shop down in a few months, I would recommend not putting that on your business card and just putting like your main, like again, your email and like one social media contact where people know to look for you. So, yeah. Next but not least is kind of a no-brainer, but I wanted to put it on this list anyway, and that's inventory. You have to have inventory. And again, this is kind of a no-brainer because I feel like why wouldn't you think of like having inventory or just having people or things for people to buy at the market? And by inventory, I mean whatever you are wanting to sell. There are a lot of different ways to, have inventory ready for art markets that I would love to make a whole other video about. You can make your stuff at home like I personally do. I make all of my art prints, I make all of my stickers, I make everything that I sell at my markets, I make them at home. But a lot of people don't. A lot of people buy them from, Sticker Mule. I used to use Sticker Mule and I loved it. They use third-party people to create their stuff and then they sell it that way, which is great. If you want to do that, perfect. But me personally, I like making my stuff at home, which again, if you would like to see a video about that, just let me know. I would love to make it. You create what you enjoy selling and what you want to sell, even if it doesn't sell, if that makes sense. For example, say you go to your very first market and you have all these stickers ready, all these prints, bookmarks, whatever you are selling. Say that you spent so much time on it and you go to your very first art market. Maybe it's not even your first art market. Maybe you just go to, you work really hard on inventory to go to a market and you only have one bookmark sell and like a sticker. Hey, that is still successful. Even if no one buys any of your stuff, that's still okay. That's something that I had to really get past is whenever I would go to art markets and people wouldn't buy my stuff, or I would walk away with like selling like 2 stickers or something, I'd be really, really discouraged, but don't let that discourage you. Keep making what you want, experiment, and see what people buy. That's like one of the biggest takeaways that I can tell you all, especially if you're first starting out, is just create whatever you want and see what people buy. I have had inventory in stock that literally won't sell for like months and months and weeks. And then I'll have someone that really enjoys that particular thing and will buy a bunch of them or literally buy everything that I have. That has happened to me before. It's really, really easy to get discouraged, especially in my personal experience. I used to get so discouraged whenever like I would go to an event and I would work so hard, like even weeks following up to the event to make inventory for the event and hardly anything was sell. And I finally got past it where I just don't care. And that might be easier said than done, but I just don't care because I know that eventually it probably will sell. You just have to make sure that keep doing what you want to do. That's like the most important thing, is that you're selling what you want. And as long as you love what you're selling, that's all that really matters. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Next, I wanted to talk to you guys about what I personally use up until this point in like my art market journey because I have been doing them for so long and how I've upgraded my stuff. And maybe, I mean, if you have been doing them for a while and you are looking to upgrade your stuff, these are the things that I would recommend. And if you are first starting out, I wouldn't say that these are a necessary thing, but they're definitely nice to have. So if you can get them right away, I think it would be very beneficial. But also you want to make sure that you're seeing whether or not you're actually going to enjoy doing the art markets, and not like go out and splurge on all this stuff and get it all right away, and then a year from now not even be doing art markets at all. I would recommend for these next supplies that I have, maybe again, if you're starting out, don't get them right away. Just kind of, get a feel for it and see if you actually would use them in like a year or so from now. So, what makes my life easier as someone who, again, whenever the season comes, I am doing art markets all the time. And I actually didn't get this until last year, so not until like 2 years into me doing markets did I get this, but it is a tent, especially during the summertime whenever it is so freaking hot outside. You need a tent. Again, you don't need it, but it's definitely very, very nice to have. I live in New Mexico and the heat here can reach up to like, I think the hottest it's ever been has been like 105, which I know compared to other places isn't that bad, but it gets really hot and we live in a desert. It's super just dry here, and the tent that I got last year has been a complete lifesaver. They have a few different sizes. I personally got a 10 by 10 tent and I got an easy up. I love it so much. I can actually put it up on my own. It is not the easiest thing in the world to do on my own, so I usually have my boyfriend or my younger brother with me. But if I absolutely have to do like an event by myself and I need to put up my tent, I can make it happen. The next thing that I have on my list that I absolutely need every single event is 2 4x6 tables. Now, previously I mentioned that you need at least one table to do like just getting started. If you're just getting started, you need at least one table, but for me personally, I need 2. The reason is because I've really expanded my inventory and what I sell at my shows. So in order to fit like everything that I need, I have to have it on 2 tables. Again, not necessary, but I highly recommend getting 2 tables if you're looking to either expand your inventory or sell new stuff. Having 2 tables really allows you to expand your options for like bringing people into your booth. So that's another reason why I like having 2 tables, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But yeah, 2 tables. Another thing that I started incorporating last year was a clothing rack. Again, this isn't necessary, especially if you're not selling clothing, but for me personally, I actually started making t-shirts. I started making t-shirts and I actually have quite a few plans to continue doing t-shirts, and there's a lot of other stuff that I want to start selling clothing wise. So that was like a necessary staple for me. And
A few moments later.
Sorry, my phone died. I mean, my camera died. Anyway, back to what I was saying. Having a clothing rack has been so helpful for me. However, again, it's not necessary. And if you're not even selling stuff like that, then you don't even need it. My next recommendation for having at your markets eventually is cute rugs. And I say this because, again, this isn't necessary, but it's something that not only attracts people to my booth, I've recognized, but it also creates like a cozy, homey feeling, especially since a lot of markets are done in like parking lots or on, cement or sidewalks or grass even. It doesn't feel super comfy, and I feel like bringing in rugs, it still helps create my space to feel very comfy and cozy, and I love that. I've had so many people compliment it and be like, oh, I love your rugs, oh, this makes it feel so cozy. It's really nice to get that feedback from, other people. I think I used like an old rug of mine that I didn't want to use in my room anymore, and I just started using it. But they even have like smaller rugs at Five Below that you can get. I actually have one from there that I use for my art markets. It was like, again, $5 or something, so you could even do something smaller like that, and maybe stack a few. Yeah, possibilities are endless with that. And then last but not least on this list is cute display items for your stuff. And by that I mean, if for example, you're selling, again, like I said, clothes. If you're selling clothes, you want to have like a display rack or, like a clothing rack to nicely display your items. Or if you're selling stickers, you might consider getting like a really affordable cork board from Hobby Lobby or Michael's or something like that so that you can display your stickers on there or whatever the case may be. I highly recommend looking into ways to display your items in a way that really attracts people to them. Whenever I first started doing art markets, I had absolutely no display stuff. I think if I did, they were like little tiny easels from Dollar Tree. Like I literally got all of my stuff from Dollar Tree whenever I first started, and that's okay too. That it works, it definitely works, and I still sold stuff. So don't get discouraged, and if you need to do that, by all means, do what you got to do. But again, later down the line, I really noticed a change in how people reacted to my booth whenever I had better ways of displaying my items. I've noticed that having very nice and cute ways of displaying your items really attracts more people, which attracts more sales. So, yeah. So that's really it for my supply recommendations, both basic and what I personally use. If you guys have any questions with that though, feel free to leave them in the comments or you can DM me on Instagram. I would love to answer any of your questions with that. But for now, let's move on to my personal tips for art markets. Now, this first tip is something that I just recently started incorporating. So if you have or have not done this, it might be new to you, it might not be. But what I started doing is incorporating what I like to call normie friendly items. And what those are normal items that normal people would buy. And that is not to be like an insult by any means. It sounds kind of weird and rude, but it's really just something. For example, some of the normie friendly, that's kind of a tongue twister. I need to change the name of that. Some of the normie friendly items that I like to include whenever I'm doing markets now are jewelry. I really like creating or making jewelry. I started doing that about a year ago and I just never stopped. And it's something that actually sells at my markets. A lot of people, even though they might not like my art or like really even like stickers or art prints or anything like that, but they do like the normal items, I have noticed a huge increase in my sales since I started incorporating my jewelry into my inventory. So whatever you sell on top of your art, I highly recommend finding items like that you could sell at your art markets as well, and just kind of experiment with stuff. I am actually still currently experimenting. There are certain jewelry items even now that don't sell very well, and then there's others that sell amazing. So again, everything is really an experiment with this type of stuff, and you're just gonna have to see what works best for you and what works best for your booth and what works best for your audience. Next on the list is include your prices on everything you sell for people to see. And I'll tell you why this makes such a big difference. I'm going to tell you guys a personal experience as a buyer versus like as a seller, just so you can kind of get more of an idea of what I'm saying. If I am at the farmer's market and I'm looking, at all the booths, whatever, sometimes I don't really like asking people what their prices are, especially whenever I'm already feeling like anxious, overwhelmed, like social anxiety, whatever. I'm already feeling all those things. And if I have to ask someone how much it is, kind of feel like obligated to buy something if I ask someone what their prices are. And I don't know if that's just me, but it's just a weird thing that I have. And so I really don't buy stuff unless there's prices on the item. Like if I go up to a booth and there's jewelry and there's no prices on anything and they don't like tell me, oh yeah, those are 20 over there and those are gonna be 50. If they don't tell me that right away and I have to actually ask them, chances are more than likely I'm not going to ask and I'm not going to buy anything from there. So just because of how I personally am, I like to put prices on every single item that I have at my markets. I actually did start noticing like a small increase in my sales whenever I started putting prices on everything. My next tip, and this is just really like a word of advice, is that your setup is so important. The way you set up your booth can be so important because it can either attract people in or it can be like pushing people away. I've noticed that having a U-shaped booth really brings people in. It makes them want to look at stuff. It makes them feel welcome to step in. If you have more of, I guess you could call it like an opposite U shape, if you have your table at the very front of your booth and you have just another table on the side, people aren't really going to feel welcome to come up. They're probably just going to like look by it, not really interact with you. And I feel like the U shape where it comes in really invites people to come in, especially if you have like larger display of item things. They're like, ooh, I want to walk in there for a second. And if you're sitting right where your table is at the very end of your booth, it invites people to interact with you. It invites you to interact with your customers and get to know them, or like let them know that, if they have any questions, feel free to ask, etc., etc. I would highly recommend doing some research on like booth setups. I've done my personal research and there's a ton of different ways. I just found that my current setup is the most simplest thing for me, but it also brings in a lot of people into my booth. That's the main thing that I'm wanting whenever I go to an art market, is making sure that people come into my booth. Now, speaking of booths, my next tip is to add something fun to your booth setup. For example, I have a huge mirror that I got from Hobby Lobby. It was literally like 90% off. I got it for like 10 or 15 bucks there. I bring it to my booth and it allows people to look in the mirror and look at themselves, especially whenever I have other clothing items. It allows them to, put it up to their body. Even with my crochet bags, people like to, try on my crochet bags and how it would look on them. So just adding the mirror to my booth really helps people like interact with your items, which will help bring sales. If people can see what it looks like on them and not have to wonder like, oh, if I get this home and I don't really like how it looks with my outfits or how it looks on me, and they're kind of regretting their purchase, they're probably not going to buy another crochet bag from you. But if they do, if they can see it like in the moment and see before they even buy it how they like it, they're like, oh yeah, this looks amazing on me. Again, this is completely up to what you specifically sell. So yeah, do your research and see what you might want to include at your booth to attract more people in. Now, the last thing that I have on my list, which I kind of already talked about earlier, but I'll kind of go into more detail on it now, is to not get discouraged if you don't sell anything. I have done my fair share of markets. And I tell you this just to kind of let you know that like it does happen. I've had so many markets where I lose money and so many markets where I don't make any money, or if I hardly don't make anything. And I used to really let it discourage me a lot. I remember because my boyfriend used to go with me to like every one of my markets, and if I didn't sell anything, I'd be like, should I be doing this? Like I would start to second guess myself, and you can't do that. You just have to keep going. Persistence is key, and I know, people say that for a lot of things, and it's so true. Persistence is key, and you just keep having to do the markets, keep figuring out, keep experimenting, learn your audience, and see what really attracts them to your booth, and people will start buying your art. My audience has grown so much, and it's also just me growing as an artist that I have to contribute that to. But do not get discouraged. It's gonna be okay. And even if if you do a few markets and you realize that this is something that's maybe not for you, that's okay too. Nothing is not worth trying, if that makes sense. Like at least you tried this and you figured out that like maybe it's not for you. That's why I highly encourage you, if you're barely starting out on this, to really not go all out and not like spend a whole bunch of money on this stuff, because you might not be wanting to do it in a year from now. But for me personally, it was a really good idea for me to invest in those types of things to make my life easier, because I knew that I would be doing markets for a long time, and I have been, and they've been so useful, and I mean, I've gotten my use out of them already. That's just something to consider. And yeah, just don't discourage yourself. It's gonna be okay. You got this. You will find your audience and you'll figure it out. I hope this helps you if you're interested in starting art markets, or if you've already been doing art markets. I hope that you were able to take a few things away from this video that you'll start incorporating in your own. And yeah, but if there's anything that you guys are wanting to see specifically, just make sure to leave it down below and I would love to do a video on it. Until next time, bye.